I will be here in just a second. I'm finishing some stuff and I'm coming. Camera, I'm here. The camera is confused. Camera, I'm here. Come on. Yes. Good. Okay, so I need to actually... I will put that down. Webcam. Let me change some stuff really quickly. And... I'm a bit overexposed, but it's okay. It will be okay. All right. All right. So let's go. This is done. Don't need to do that anymore. And I don't know if I remove the chat. Maybe I can hide everything, as the chat will not be here. The chat will not be here because we are on YouTube. So let me remove it really quickly. Yeah, okay, let's do it like that. Hi, Manic. How you doing? Okay. Okay. Good. Let's start. So the goal today is pretty simple. I've ported to God-of-War the little game that I've made live some time ago. I think it was 3 weeks ago. I think it was, yeah, 3 weeks ago. And today it's simple. I'm taking that little project that I'm going to run right now. That way you can see what we're working with. So this is this little asteroid. It's basically a recreation of asteroids. It's functional, but the problem that I have is that it looks very bare bone. There's no effect. There's no juice. As you can see, the movement is very static. It's very stiff, let's say. It's very stiff. So I don't like that. Hey, Mythology. So the goal with this live stream is to show you the basics, is to show you how with simple effects you can turn something like that into something more interesting. And you will see, I hope, that it's not that complicated, and it's just, the idea is just that to make a juicy game you have to add lots of different effects, and with lots of different tricks, of course, but we can get into that. I think that's it. Before we do, if you don't have the project, if you want to check out the project, it's on my GitHub, so you can go on GitHub and whoops, I'm sorry, I forgot, I don't have the bot on YouTube. Anyway, you can go on my GitHub, it's probably linked somewhere on my channel, and you'll have the project files, you have the source code. I've created a new branch. I've created an old branch for 3.5, and if you're using the master, it's going to be for God-of-War. So basically, the project that you will find on GitHub is the project as is right now. And what I will do on this live is I will create new effects and stuff, etc., and then I will push that onto GitHub. So Alamore, I will be live for about 2 hours, not more than that, because I need to go then. So I don't know if you will, how long you're going to be away. If you want to start with something simpler, I made another live you can find on my channel where I make the base game, which is even more beginner friendly because we're doing everything that needs to be done to create the game. So you can check that first if you want. Alright, shall we try? Shall we go? I think we should. So one of the first things that I will do is I will actually connect my gamepad to make... Okay, whoops. I will connect my gamepad because it's just better to play with it. I'm drinking coffee, yes. Otherwise, I will start sleeping and you will not like that. Oh, it's funny because this one is still named marker, but this one is named position 2D. So but when you switch to God-of-War, there are a few things that will change, and one of them is the name of position 2D. It's now marker 2D, and as you can see, I guess because this one was the first one, it was named position 2D, so it got renamed correctly, and those were not because they have 2, 3, 4, etc. at the end. It doesn't really matter, right? But that's just a fact. Okay, so let's go to the asteroid. I will go to and before we do that, I'm wondering if I should do... Sorry, I bumped. Before we start anything, I will go on Visual Studio Code. I will open up the project really quickly. I'm gonna make a branch for the base game. So asteroids, I'm gonna make a branch for the base game, or I'm gonna make a branch for the juice part. I don't know. I think I will use... Let's create another branch, create a new branch, and I will say this is going to be base game Godot 4. Create the new branch, upload the new branch, and come back to master. All right. That way we still have the base game somewhere. So one of the first thing that I want to do is make the movement a bit smoother, because it's supposed to be a spaceship, and as you can see right now, we start and stop very abruptly. Same for the rotation. Basically, there's no smoothing on that, and we can change that pretty easily. So what I will do is, at the very top, I will define some export variables. So I define them as export variables, that way we can adjust them from the editor if we want. We don't have to go in the code every time. So export var, I'm gonna name it Excel for acceleration. Let's say 20, but we'll probably make that smaller. Export var, I'm gonna use friction then, float. Let's say it has a pretty low friction, meaning that when you let go of the controls, it's gonna slide for a certain amount of time. We can also... Sorry, I stopped the music. We can also create a third one called rotation speed, and it's basically going to be the same thing. It's going to be a float, and maybe we don't want to go too low. 15, we'll see that. And basically we are going to use lerp. Okay, so in the physics process, is it where... Oh, I mean the asteroid, sorry. Okay, so let's take what I just created and let's go in the player. I didn't... Oh my god. I'm a bit tired, sorry guys. So let's go back to the player scene, to the player script, and then we can add our accel friction and rotation speed. Okay. Oh, and we already have it because I'm already doing it here. So let's go rotation smooth speed for the smoothing. Are you going to add shader magic and camera shake, or just game feel? Camera shake is part of the game feel, and shaders can be part of the game feel too. I don't know if we'll have time for shaders, but I'll see. Maybe we can add a simple blinking shader for when you take damage. That could be one thing. All right, so in here, basically, what we do is we get the action strength. So get action strength has the ability to give you something between 0 and 1 instead of just 1. So it's gonna affect, like, when you're going to use an analog input, like your trigger right there or the joystick, it's going to give you something between 0 and 1. Which gives you a bit more control. So I'm going to use that. So for the thrust, what we are doing at the moment is every time we're thrusting, we are basically telling the velocity to be exactly the amount that we want. And one very simple trick that we can do is we can use lerp instead, which stands for linear interpolation. So linear interpolation, you go from the current velocity, you want to go to that amount, which is thrust times speed time global transform, which is the direction that we are in, and you want to do that at a certain speed. So we are going to do that at accel times delta. So basically you always use delta when you do something every frame. This is to make sure that no matter the frame rate, you're going to have the same result. Because as the frame rate goes higher, delta is smaller, so it's going to reduce the amount that you're doing every frame. So in the end, whether you are at 30 FPS or 120, it's going to have the same effect, okay? If you're not sure about that, put it on paper and compute the difference, and you'll see that it's working fine, okay? So with that, we have some acceleration, but right now we don't have friction. What we can do is we can say if thrust is superior to 0, okay? Thrust is between 0 and 1. If thrust is superior to 0, we put that into velocity, meaning that we accelerate, and we can do else. And instead of thrust times speed times global transform dot x, we can go to vector2.0. Instead of the acceleration, though, we are going to use the friction. And with just that change now, let's launch the game. We should... how do I accelerate? Accelerate times delta, lerp, velocity, thrust, yes. Input map, thrust, joystick down. What? Oh, so this is probably one of the... It's probably when I went with Godot 4. I didn't see that. But basically, the thing got confused and it's not joystick down, right? I don't want to use that. So we can change that. Listening for input, I will press the right trigger, put OK. And let's try again. Alright, so now what we have is it's starting to feel a bit more like a spaceship, but we can actually remove some of the acceleration and friction if we want to make it more floaty. So then it depends on how you want your game to feel. So as you can see right now, when I let go, so I can show you, when I let go, it actually takes quite a bit of time to stop, and the acceleration is not instantaneous. The acceleration takes some time, meaning that it feels more like a spaceship. So of course you can play with the values. You can say, okay, this is a spaceship. I want even a smaller acceleration, and you can even go lower than 1 on the friction. You can go 0.5, whatever, if you want really the thing to feel really floaty. So at the moment we have the same problem for the rotation. The rotation is instantaneous. So what we can do is we can do the same procedure, okay? So we can say rotation instead of adding here. We can say rotation is equal to lerp angle this time. Okay, we start from rotation and we want to go to rotation plus that times direction. Yes, we want to go to that, and we want to do that at rotation smooth speed times delta, and we can remove what is here. And so right now the problem that we have is, actually it's not what I want to do. Actually I want to lerp the amount that we rotate. We'll do that in just a second, okay? I wanted to show you, it's not the perfect example to show you that, but I wanted to show you the difference between lerp and lerp angle. So the problem that you have if you use lerp on a rotation is that when you arrive at 360 degrees, the lerp is going to, if you want to go back to 0, the lerp is going to go the other direction. Basically, you're going to do a whole turn in the other direction instead of just smoothly going from here to here. So lerp angle is taking care of that, but we can use another example later on. It doesn't matter. So one of the things that I also wanted to do was add some particles to show that we are actually doing something with our spaceship. Okay, so here we have a thruster. I think we can safely add some particles. So let's add some GPU particles. Okay, I'm going to rename that to thrust particles. And the first thing that we see is that we are missing a material to process. Okay, so let's just go under process material and add a new particle process material. All right, perfect. For the amount, we can already bump the amount to maybe 31, I don't know. We are going to change that. So the lifetime, I want to reduce the lifetime. Sorry, just a second. So I'm going to reduce that. I'm going to change the gravity, okay? I don't want any gravity. By default, you have gravity. What I want is probably a bit of initial velocity. But not too much, because by default, the particles are emitted in global space, meaning that they will not be attached to your sprite. They will go away. Like if you move, they will stay where they are. They have their own transform, right? We can change the direction, because right now it's going in the right direction, so we want to go in -x. Okay, we can keep the spread like that or reduce it a bit to have more a feeling of a thruster. Okay, we can change the scale. So by changing the minimum scale, it's also changing the maximum scale at the same time, which is very handy. Okay, perfect. Then we can, of course, reduce the minimum scale a bit. That way we have a bit of randomness. I'm gonna move the particles roughly where they should be. That way we have a better idea of what it's looking like. And one of the first thing that we can try is adding a scale curve. So click on empty, new curve texture, and then click on the curve texture. And in here you can click on the curve, and now we can edit the curve. So basically this is going to, the curve is going to be used over the lifetime of the particle. So at the moment, the curve is always at 1, meaning that it's always the same scale, okay? But what we can do is start the scale. So by taking the first point and putting wherever we want, I want to put it at 0. I will put the second one very close, okay? So in here, it's the time, and in here, it's the size. So in X, it's the time, and in Y, it's the size. So I want to take the second point and make it very close. That way, the particle is going to quickly come to the full size. And then I can right-click, add point, and make it fade over time. So as you can see right now, it's fading over time. Okay, cool. We can go back to that if we want. I'm gonna remove the scale for now. What I want to do is actually change the emission shape, because right now everything is emitting from that point. I want to make it a bit bigger. So let's go into emission shape, and instead of a point, we can put a box, for example. We can keep it in X, we can keep it in 1, but we can maybe make that bigger in Y, so maybe 5. Maybe 5 is too big, actually. 2.5. Okay, so that way it's coming more from the whole thing. Perfect. Let's go to the color. So you can change just the color of the particles if you want, like that. But we can do something better. Let's put that back to white. We can add a color ramp. So the same way that we change the scale over time, we can change the color over time. So click new gradient texture and click on it to edit the texture. So right here we have some points, and we can move them. We can, when clicking here, change the color of that point, and we can also add many points and remove them by right clicking. So what I want is to start maybe at something very reddish, put another point where we are going to go to something more orange. If you want to edit a point, you just click on the little rectangle here, and then you can click on the color here to change the color. Then I can put a third point, make it, I don't know, something like yellowish. Then we can go to white. That's good. All right. And finally, I will add a last point, and I will change the alpha. I will put the alpha to 0. So now what we have, if we look at the gradient, we have few colors at the beginning. As you can see, they change color over time, and then at the very end we fade to transparent. That way it's like it's gone. Okay, so it makes more sense if we put the thrust particle behind the player. I think you would agree on that. So let's move the thrust particle behind the sprite, and now they come out of the sprite. At the moment, it doesn't really make sense because they emit. So let's go in the script. Let's go here, click on thrust, drag it in the script, hit Control, drop, and then it's creating for you an unready variable. You don't have to write it. So thrust particle, let's grab that, and let's go in here, and where we check if we have thrust or not, we can basically say thrust particle emitting is equal to true. Control D to duplicate, Alt and arrow keys to move down, and else we put it to false. Okay, let's check that, and let's see if it looks good or not. Okay, so now we have our thrust particle. Okay, pretty cool. It doesn't look amazing because everything is super small in reality. This is something that maybe will change. Everything is super small. So we have a few things that we can do, because at the moment I think it doesn't look amazing. One of the first thing that we can do is go back to the thrust particle, 2D. We can change the time. So the lifetime, the lifetime can be smaller, like 0.25. Okay, perfect. And we can put way more particles. That way we won't have gaps in the trail that we have. Okay. Before doing anything else, I think we can change the scale. I don't know what you think, but I think the game right now, the player is really, really small. So maybe we can go with 0.35. Maybe change the collision shape to fit the player, roughly. Okay, it doesn't need to be perfect. And let's move the thrust particles. Okay, perfect. And let's try again to see how it looks right now. Okay, so it's slightly better. It's slightly better. Of course, you can change that. You can do pretty much as many things as you want to change how the particles should look. Another way that you could use is, instead of drawing, so in draw, instead of doing global coordinates, you could put them to local coordinates, and then you wouldn't have the trail. So as you can see, we don't really see a lot. You would have to make more, you would have to put more velocity, but basically we can have the particles stay attached to the to our thingy. Okay. I need to adjust the bullet points because I changed the scale, so I'm just moving them back to where the things are. Okay. So let's put back the thrust particle to global coordinates. And maybe change the scale a bit. So that it's, whoops, not that big actually. Okay, that way it's bigger. Let's go something like this. That way it's a bit bigger. And we still have the curve texture. If you think that it's curving too fast, you can move the points like this to change the way it's going to 0, right? You can change however you want. Okay. I don't know if we have trails in here. We have a trail 2D, we can use that maybe. So let's try to use that. Download. So one of the things that you can do to go faster is simply add add-ons to your game. I'm gonna test this one with you. I don't know if it's usable or not. But the idea is that we can put trails. Trail 2D, yes. We can put trails to make the thing a bit more interesting. It's not realistic at all because you don't have trails like that in space maybe. But I think we don't care. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the width curve. I'm going to put 2 points and I'm going to start at 1 and fade out like that. Same for the gradient. This is possible that it's the opposite direction. Sometimes it's the opposite. So let's try with one trail. Let's see how it looks. Hey Marco. Ah yeah, we have this problem. Yes, we have this problem. So they don't handle positioning them outside. So we could have the trail to be at the center, but I don't know if it's going to be amazing. And I don't want to handle myself all of that. Yeah, it's not amazing. So let's remove the trail. I'm sorry guys, but that's the problem with using Godot 4. You don't have access to all of the add-ons that were here before. So you have to do it yourself, and we don't have time for that today, unfortunately. So we are going to shoot. We are going to make some animations for when we shoot. I think we should have a small muzzle flash effect. So to do the muzzle flash effect, you have multiple ways of doing it. I think I'm going to show you how to do it with an animation player. You could do it with particles if you want. You could do it with tweens. Doesn't really matter. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to create some assets for that, because right now we don't have assets. So I'm going to remove that and I'm going to rename that to Muzzle. I forgot the M, Muzzle Flash. So the Muzzle Flash probably doesn't need to be that big. 3275. Okay. So to do the muzzle flash, I think we can use a tier tool. We can use that. Yeah, it should be enough. Let's rotate that. So of course, if you want to do something specific, you can do it. You can create your own assets correctly. I'm just doing that really quickly. That way, we have something to work with. Oh, I'm going to lag for a while. My PC's going into dark mode. Sorry, guys. Okay, cool. So what I want is a linear. I want a linear gradient here, and I'm going to change the opacity. As we go to the end, I'm going to make it less and less opaque. And I'm going to change the direction of the gradient like that. Okay, that's good. So let's export that. Export the muzzle flash. Yes. Of course, you will find that. I will add that to the project assets on the Google Drive and also on the, of course, on the GitHub. You will find that. So asteroids, scenes, this is for the player, visuals, and it's muzzle flash. Okay, if we go back to here, now we have under scenes, player, visuals, we have muzzle flash. All right, perfect. So transform, let's make that smaller. Just like that should be good. What is going on? Okay, so let's duplicate this. Let's duplicate this. No, before duplicating, sorry, I'm going to show you something. So at the moment, the offset for the sprite is in the middle. So if you go under transform and if you change the scale, as you can see, it's scaling from the middle. It's not what we want because we want the muzzle flash to come out. So what we can do is change the offset in here, okay? And by changing the offset, as you can see, the texture is changing. And we can place the offset at the very beginning of the texture, just like that. So in this case, around 53 pixels, okay? And so now you can move again your thingy to be where you want. And now you can duplicate this muzzle flash. And to position it right there, we can directly go in the under position, and instead of minus 23 in Y, we can go to 23. Okay, perfect. So now we have the muzzle flash. So let's go on the player, Control A to add a node, animation player, and we have our new animation player. So let's create animation new. I'm gonna have the animation called shoot, and click OK. So now it's pretty simple. What I want to do is I want to basically make the muzzle flash shoot out and fade, okay? So I'm gonna click on muzzle flash. I'm gonna put the scale to 0 at first, and I'm going to hit this little key right there, which is going to create a key under a new track under the animation player. So click on it. I want to create a reset track. So this means that it's going to put the scale back to that value, so to 0. And in this case, I don't want to use the Bezier curve. I will use the default curves. It's going to be fine. Click create, and now we have what we want. I'm just going to animate one, and then I'm going to copy the values. Okay. So we start at 0. Let's say that we want to go back to 0.192. Okay, so pretty fast we're going to do boop. And then what we want is to fade out the muzzle flash. So to fade out, we're going to go under visibility and under modulate. So let's click the little key to go and select modulate. Again, we create reset track, but we don't use the Bezier curve. And now we have a new track with modulate, and we can change the color pretty easily. So modulate, I'm going to use modulate for the color, and I'm going to use modulate for the alpha. That way I'm going to show you that you can use those separately, okay? So let's click here just under modulate and click to add another key under self modulate. Same thing, create reset track, don't use Bezier curve, create. So why am I doing that? Well, you will see. Now if I go somewhere around the end, I click to select my key and I hit Ctrl D to duplicate. It's going to duplicate the key. I can select the last one and put that to alpha is equal to 0. So as you can see, it's going to come up really, really fast, and then it's going to fade out. Okay, pretty cool. But I also want to change the color. And you could do that with modulate or self-modulate, but what I'm doing is I'm separating the two. That way I can control the color on one place and I can control the alpha on the other place. So modulate, what I want is I want to start at white. Then when I'm at full size, I want to hit Ctrl D to duplicate, and I'm going to, let's say, go full red. Okay, so it's going to do full red. Then I'm going to change with Ctrl D to duplicate. I'm going to go maybe orange. And then maybe I'm coming back to yellow. And then I'm fading, okay? So if we play right now, it looks pretty bad because everything is happening very, very slowly, okay? So what we can do is we can change the snapping right there. That way we can go smaller. For example, 0.01. And we're going to take all of those by doing box select, you select all of those. I'm going to make that much quicker, okay? So the first thing, the muzzle flash, I want that to be really, really quick. Like it's going here really quickly. It's changing the values also really quickly. And then it's fading out. As you can see, you want it to be like a flash, honestly. You want it to be like a flash. I don't know if I want to go with yellow, actually. It doesn't look that good. Okay, pretty good. You can keep the white for a bit longer if you want. Okay. Let's say it looks good enough. One thing that we can do is go at the very end, Control D to have the scale again, and maybe we can scale that up slightly more, so we can go to 0.2 maybe. That way the muzzle flash is still growing up as it's fading away, you see. It's a slight difference. We can actually make it a bit bigger, maybe 0.21. That way you have the muzzle flash going away like that. Hey Eric, how you doing? And one last little trick, we are going to change the easing. So as you can see right now, if you select this key, for example, the easing is linear. It means that it's coming from one value to the next one linearly. And usually what you want is you want to use easing, which is going to make the curve start slow, ramp up, and then slowly goes to the value that you want. So with Godot, you can select all of those by doing box select like that. And under easing, you can right click and use ease in out, for example. You can use whatever you want, of course, but ease out is giving you that nice curve. You know, it's like starting slow, ramping up, and then arriving at the value. So you might not see the difference, especially in that case, it's going very, very fast. So you might not see the difference, honestly. But it's making a difference, I can tell you. Okay, one thing that we want to do is take those two muzzle flash and place them behind the sprite. So put them before the sprite. That way when they fire behind the sprite. I think it's better. And now we can do the same thing for the muzzle flash too. So I don't know in Godot if there's a way to do it fast. I know that now you can manage different animations and maybe reuse them, but I don't know how, honestly. The muzzles are looking good. Thank you. Appreciate it. So basically what we can do is we can recreate it pretty fast. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. It's fast enough in this case. But if you have to do that for complex animations and stuff, it would be better to find a solution to not redo them over and over again, of course. So let's start with 0 for the second one. We place that at 0. In here, we place a second one at 0.92. Here we duplicate, we go to 0.21, I think. Yes, 0.21, okay. And then we want modulate and self-modulate. So let's go modulate, create, self-modulate, create. And we are going to place them at the same spot. So in here, you duplicate, you take that, put it to alpha is equal to 0. I'm going a bit fast because it's exactly what we just did. So if you want to rewatch it, you can rewatch it basically. It's also a good time to try different stuff. So do your own animation, try to change the color, try to change a bunch of things. It's really one of the best way to learn. It's to do your own things and do your own mistakes, of course. So actually, one way that we could have done that much faster, now that I think about it, if you are going to animate two things to be exactly the same, what you can do is put them as child of another node, and then you can animate that node instead. And basically, you're going to have the same thing. You're going to have the same behavior, right? So you could place them as a child of a sprite. The sprite could be empty, and then you animate the thing. Or as a node, just as a node actually, it doesn't need to be a sprite. And then you can change the self-modulate that way. The modulate, sorry, not the self-modulate. So just for you to know in case you don't know, the modulate is changing the color of the node and the children, and the self-modulate is not changing the color of the children. But you can also use it as two separate ways of controlling the same color. That's what I did here, right? I'm using the modulate to change the color, and then I'm using the self-modulate to change the alpha, because the self-modulate is going to be applied after the modulate. So you can use both of those if you want. So now when we shoot, it's going to do the muzzle flash like that. I think it's pretty great. So let's change the length of the animation to be 0.26. What is the length here? 0.27? 0.27. Yes. And so now when we are going to shoot, yes. When we are going to shoot, in here, we do set the direction and blah, blah, blah. Right here, we can do animation player. Oh, we don't have the reference to the animation player. So again, to have the reference, you can simply drag the animation player right here. And instead of just dropping it, because if you drop it, it's going to give you the path, you can drop it while you hit control, and then boom, it's creating for you the onReady variable. So animation player. So it's funny because in Godot 3, when you were doing that, it was automatically adding the type. It was automatically doing that. Animation player. And I think it's good to do that because Godot is going to give you more, is going to help you more when you're writing code if you know what type it is. When is Godot 4 tutorial coming out, bro? What do you mean? What Godot 4 tutorial? I am using Godot 4 at the moment, so it's kind of a tutorial. So animation player dot play, and we can play shoot. Okay, let's go and see that. So now when we shoot, boom, we have our little muzzle flash coming out. of our little thingy, okay? So at the moment, there's one thing that is not amazing, and it's that when you destroy an asteroid like that, there's basically nothing happening. So I think what should happen is we should create an explosion, right? So let's do that. Let's create the explosion, and then we're going to the camera because we have things to do with the camera. Asteroids visuals. We have asteroids right there, but we don't have the shard. I created the shard right there. We need to use that. So I'm exporting that to scene, asteroid, visuals, and let's call it shard. Okay. So let's go back to Godot. Now we have the shard. And now what we can do is create our particles. So I'm going to create the particles inside of the asteroid scenes, but then we are going to save that as a different scene, and you're going to understand why. But usually what I do is I start by creating the particles in the same scene. That way I have the scale, right? I can see how big my asteroid is and how big the effect should be. So let's take a look. Let's add child, call particles. Actually, we have it here. We don't need to create another one. Let's call it explode particles. And what I want is I want to change the amount. I'm going to right away change the texture. So I'm going to do quick load, and I have shard somewhere here. Okay. So I'm going to use those things to simulate little pieces of the asteroid, okay? I'm going to do 2 explosions actually, but this is the small pieces part. So let's go under process material, particle process. We're going to basically create pretty much the same thing as we did before. I mean, not the same, but you're going to see. First thing first, in time we can change to add a bit of lifetime randomness, okay? Emission shape, we are going to change that. Let's change that to a sphere, and let's make it bigger. As you can see, as we are making it bigger, the shards are starting to spawn at different locations, okay? It's going to look better that way. Under direction, I'm keeping it at 1 in X, but what I want is the spread to be all around. So basically it's going to launch them in every direction, okay? Gravity we don't need. Initial velocity is important. So let's change that. And as you can see, by putting some velocity, it's going to push them outward, and this is exactly what we want. So I'm going to move the velocity minimum. Once I'm happy with how it looks, I can reduce a bit the minimum. That way we have different velocities. Angular velocity, you can do the same thing. You can change the angular velocity. That way we have the shards are rotating, okay? And again, you can make it different between the minimum and the maximum. That way you have some changes. Orbit velocity is to make them rotate around the center, so I'm not going to use that, but I'm just showing you. If you want to make a cool like black hole effect, you can use orbit velocity, but I don't want to use that. I want to put some damping. So basically damping is going to slow the velocity that you put at the beginning. That way you have a high velocity at the beginning, and then it's slowing down as it's having some friction. So again, we are in space. It's not like there is friction, but we don't care about that. Under angle, what we can do is we can put the angle minimum to 0 and the angle max to 720. That way they start at a random angle. The scale, you're starting to know how to use the scale. We are going to reduce both of those. So, come on. Just reduce that. Okay. That way we have a bit of randomness in the different shards. And I can create a new texture, a curve texture. Again, to make them fade over time. For example, like that. Okay. I'm not going to touch the color for now. All of those things I'm not going to touch at the moment. Let's go in the lifetime and let's make them live for much longer. Okay. And one thing that we want, because it's an explosion, we want all of the particles to be spawned roughly at the same time. So under explosiveness, we can bump that to something close to 1. And as you can see, when you're doing that, you have, if you're at 1, every particles are spawned at the same time. So this is what I want. I want something that is pretty close to 1. Now it looks good. Pretty cool. You can add some randomness. It's going to add with the randomness that you used earlier. So let's go back under the scale. I want to change the scale. I want to make the minimum scale a bit bigger and the maximum scale a bit bigger too. All right, pretty cool. For the visibility, we can use the same color as we have for this. So let's add that to the swatch. Let's go under the explode particles. You don't need to change the color directly here. Because it's white, you can use the self-modulate. And it's basically doing the same thing. Alright. So that is one part of the things that I want to create. Maybe I want slightly less initial velocity. That way they're not going that far. One other thing that I want is to create some sort of explosion. It's actually super simple to create an explosion with particles. I'm going to show you that in just a second. But for that, I need something to be round. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to duplicate the shard. And I'm going to create a circle. So let's call that circle. I'm just going to create a circle. I'm going to put it to full white, put it in the center, make it a bit bigger, and I'm going to save that. And I'm going to call circle. Okay? And we'll be able to use that circle for other things maybe. So actually here, let's call that debris. Those are the debris. And this is the explosion. Shit. I'm in particles. I'm in QWERTY. Okay. So here what you want to do is use the texture that we just created. So circle. Okay, as you can see we have a circle here. Perfect. And let's create another particle process. Again, we're going to repeat the same thing. Once you start to understand how to do it, you will understand that it's pretty much always the same thing. You're always using the same parameters. So here what I want is to create an explosion, and to do that you're going to see that it's pretty simple. First of all, let's change the emission shape. Let's change it to a sphere and let's make that bigger. That way we are covering... Yes, that way we are covering the... we are covering the... What is that? We are covering the asteroid. I'm gonna use something a bit bigger, maybe 14 for the amount, okay? So now it looks weird, I know. But what we are going to do is use two things. We are going to change the scale and we're going to change the color, and you're going to see that it's going to look good, I think. It's simple, but it looks good. First of all, we can change again. Usually this is something that you want to do. You want to have variations, okay? This is something important to make your game juicy. You don't want the things to be always the same size, okay? So in this case, I'm always changing the minimum and the maximum scale. That way we have some randomness. And for the scale curve, it's pretty simple. Let's go under the curve. The first point and the second point are really close because you want that explosion effect, okay? And then what you want, at the third point, that will fade over. And as you can see, it's starting to look like an explosion. We can already change the time to make it a bit more snappy. As you can see, it's starting to look like an explosion. Again, bump up the explosiveness. If you put the explosiveness to 1, everything is at the same time. It's not amazing. You want an explosion that moves over time a bit like that, I think. So 0.53 maybe is good. Play with it, do whatever you want. Hey Nixie, hello. And under the color, this is the most important thing. Create a new color ramp. You can keep the black. We're going to use it at the very end. And actually, the last key, put it to black too, but put it to transparent, okay? This is the smoke. At the very beginning, what you want to go to something red. At the very beginning, you want something red. Then the second point can be orange or... yeah, I think orange is good. Maybe the first point should be white. I think I've done that usually, and it looks good when it's like that. So first point, white. Hey, Smilodon. Alright, now we are talking. Then you put that a bit more to the orange side. And here you can choose, for example, if you add another black, here you will have, you will have some, smoke for longer. Depends on how long do you want to see the smoke, how quickly you want the colors to change. You play with it. You can also add another white here if you want to emphasize the white. You create more white like that, and then you change color. I think that like that it looks good. So now we have our explosion. What I can do is bump up the numbers, probably 25. That way we cover the thing a bit more, okay? So as I said, usually what I do is I create the particles on the asteroid itself, on the scene itself, and then I save it as a separate scene. This is because I'm going to spawn the particles and I'm going to destroy the scene right away. So to do that, it's pretty simple. First of all, let's make sure that you put your particles to one shot, okay? We want them to explode once and then they stop. So under time, you put them to one shot. And then I'm going to right click on debris, save branch as scene. You can go under the asteroid, debris particles, or explode particles, whatever, save. You can remove this one, yes, and open up the debris particles. So what we want to do now is attach a script to that. And the script is going to be pretty simple. Okay, this is a script. In Godot, it's a bit painful, but you don't have... I think we don't have that in Godot 4, if I'm correct. Yes, we still don't have that. We have no way of knowing if the particles are done emitting or not, if you can safely remove them. So what we do usually is we start a timer with the time that we think it's going to take. And when the timer times out, we simply queue free the node. So this is what I'm doing here. Queue free. And we are going to start the timer. So in here, to go fast, I'm going to do something that is not amazing. but you can do it better if you want. In here we have 2 particles. So usually what you want to do is you want to go through all of the particles node that you have and make sure that you know which one is going to take the longest, okay? In this case, I know that the debris is going to go for longer because the lifetime is like 2.4 seconds. So I'm going to set the timer dot start with the lifetime of this particle, okay? If you want to do a better script, you can use the lifetime divided by the speed scale, because the speed scale is making your particles go faster, so the lifetime is smaller. And also usually what you want is you want to go through all of the particles that you have, make sure that you take the longest lifetime and use this one. Again, in this case, I know which one to use. So then you can say emitting is equal to true, and you can do the same thing for the child, explosion particle, emitting is equal to true. Same thing here. You can create one script that you will use for all of your particles. You can do a script which would go through all of the children, check if they are particles, and if they are particles, would emit them. You don't need to do it by hand like that, okay? In this case, I'm doing it because we don't have a lot of time, and but you can do it better if you want. I'm pretty sure there's an add-on for that. I know someone made it. I don't know if it's ported to Godot 4. So here you have fancy particles. I don't know what it is. Hidden particles pack. No. So in Godot 3 you have an add-on for that. It's called self-freeing particles, and basically it's particles that are self-freeing. Simple as that. Hey, 98k, welcome. So now we have these particles. Any tips on making tutorials on YouTube? Just made one, and let's just say I didn't do as expected it to be. Well, it's quite out of the scope for today, but I can reply really quickly. There are 2 things. First, YouTube. YouTube is a very complex thing because you can make great videos, but if you don't package them well, or if you don't have a good thumbnail, a good title and stuff, people will not click on it. So that's one thing. Making videos is hard. Like making good videos, it will take time, it will take effort. So lower your expectations. Also, when making tutorials, specifically about tutorials, first of all, make tutorials on things that people want to know about. Like, if you make tutorials on something that nobody wants to hear, it's not going to do well. Second thing, make sure that your tutorial is concise. Start your tutorial with a quick explanation of what you're going to do and show the result. Let's say that you're saying, okay, today we are going to make an asteroid game like this. Show it on screen. Show the user what he will do, okay? That's one thing. And then be concise. So if you need to script your videos, make sure that when you say something, you know what you're going to say. Don't be this person creating a tutorial that lasts 20 minutes because it's filled with, let's see, I don't know, and pauses and stuff like that, okay? So make it short, make it so people want to see it, are interested, and select your subject to something that is not done on YouTube and something that is interesting. If you make a tutorial about something that has been done 100 times, I don't know why people would watch it, you know? And I think that's it. I think it's enough. So now in the asteroids, let's create an export export variable. Export variable. I'm going to call it debris particles. It's going to be a packed scene. Oh no. Now it's not called packed scenes, or maybe it is actually. I don't know. If I do that, it's just going to do preload debris particle. Okay. So now we have the debris. So what we can do is we can create a function. We can create a function called func spawn debris particles. And in here we can do var instance is equal to debris particles dot instantiate. We want to get tree dot get current scene. So get current scene is going to give us the scene that is just behind the root, that is just the child of the root. So in this case it's going to be game. We want to get the current scene and we want to add a child, and the child is going to be our instance. And then what we want to do is change the global position of that instance, and we want to change it to global position, our global position. Thanks man, appreciate it. Spawn debris, and what we want is when we are going to destroy ourselves, we want to spawn the debris. So let's check how it's going to look now. Okay, much better. Already you can see there's an explosion, particles that are going away. That is pretty cool. Okay, so a few things that we can do now, but I think one thing that I want to do is create a camera. Okay, so in this case, I think we have two choices. In reality, we have many choices, but let's say we have two choices, okay? The first choice is to have a camera that is on the player itself, and that will follow the player wherever he goes. The other solution is to have a fixed camera, but to make it more interesting, we can move the camera slightly away from the center, okay? I can show you both really quickly. So let's actually go on the player itself. Let's add a child and let's add a camera 2D. The camera by default is going to be on the center of the thing, okay. And what we can do is we can do position smoothing enable, okay. By doing that, it's going to smooth the following. Instead of directly following the player like that, it's going to slightly lag behind, and it's going to add some motion. Usually you want to add a bit of motion to your camera to make it more interesting. When you're watching a film, look at the camera. It's not always static, right? The camera is not always placed somewhere waiting for things to happen. You have a bunch of cameras. Some cameras are moving like they are handled directly with the hands. Some of them are smoothly traveling. Some of them are zooming in, zooming out, etc, etc. You want to mimic that in your game. You want to add movement to your camera to make it more interesting. So the process callback, we are going to put that to physics because we are moving the player during the physics. So if we put the process callback to physics on the camera, it's going to be smoother. So I forgot to select camera. I don't know where it is in Godot 4. Do we have the current? Where is it? Drag center, yes. Where is the current? We don't have current anymore? What is that? What is that? Okay, so let me remove this one just in case. I don't know why we don't have the current anymore. That's weird. So as you can see now, it's difficult to see because, I mean, we can see because we go out of the screen. The problem with a camera like that is it will follow the player, so it can be interesting. But in this case, I think I want to limit the camera because in the end, I want to limit the player. So let's use the second version. So let's go on the player. Let's remove the camera. Let's go on the game and add the camera right there. So what I want is I want to add the camera at the center of the screen. So I know that my screen is 1920, so I can do 1920 divided by 2 and 1980 divided by 2. And now my camera is at the very center. I'm going to do something. I'm going to place the zoom to something smaller, and you're going to see why in just a second. Okay, so I'm making, by default, I'm zooming more on the player, and I'm going to zoom out when we thrust. So camera 2D, I want some camera shake, and so to have some camera shake, I'm going to quickly grab some camera shake. I have a camera shake somewhere. I have a script for that. Maybe you can find something in the asset lib. If you go on shake, there's only this node that is shaking nodes, but it's not shaking the way I want. So let's do it ourselves. First of all, I'm going to add a script to the camera. Let's put it here. Let's do camera and create. So just a second, I'm going to grab my camera script. Actually, I don't know where it is. Oh, because it's on the base. Fuck, I need to go on juice. Just a second. So scene, probably under game, under camera 2D. We have the script right there. It's copied, right? Yes. So I have a bunch of things. I'm going to remove some of them, because I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm just using the script. The target, I don't want that. Dynamic factor, I don't want that. Follow target, I don't want that. Reset camera, I don't want that. Start tracking and stop tracking, I don't want that. So what I want is just this. I want the shake function. And I think that's it. So a few things. What I want is, usually what I do, personally, everywhere in your game, it's possible that you want to do something with the camera, but you don't want to pass the camera node, you don't want to pass the reference to every node. So what you can do is create a global script, and then inside this global script you can place reference the camera. So let me show you how. I'm gonna open up new folder here. I'm gonna call autoload, and under autoload I'm going to create a new script. I'm going to call it globals. All right. And under globals, what I'm going to do is create a variable called camera. By default, it's null. And this camera is going to be able to be used by anyone, okay? So under game, what I do, at the very beginning, I do globals dot camera is equal to, and I grab the camera 2D reference that we have right there. Right now it doesn't know globals, so let's go under project settings, and under autoload I will click the little icon here, select globals, so the node name is going to be globals, add, and now I'm going to be able to use that globals. Okay, so basically it's a singleton. It means that it's a class that has one instance and you can access it from anywhere. So Godot is just going to take a second to understand that this is accessible. So what is the interest of that is now that I've set that to now that I've set the camera to globals, I can use it wherever I want. So for example, in the player, let's say every time I'm shooting, I want to actually shake the camera. So with the script that I'm using, we have 3 parameters for the shake. We have the duration, the frequency, and the amplitude of the shake. So because shooting is something that you're going to do very often, you don't want to have too much shake, otherwise it's going to feel very, very horrible for the player. So you can have, for example, maybe 0.15 seconds. In the frequency, maybe a high frequency but a low amplitude, maybe 10. You have to play with the values and see if it works or not, okay? So let's try that. Asteroid scene. What is the problem? Instantiate on a null value. What? What is the problem? Asteroid scene. I don't understand. Why is that null? I didn't change anything. What the fuck? That was weird. Okay, so now every time I shoot, as you can see, there's a small shake. It's not huge, but it shouldn't be too huge, of course. Otherwise, it's going to look weird. So now, when you destroy an asteroid, you can do the same thing. So under the asteroid script, we can say that when we are destroyed, we can spawn some debris, but also we can call globals.camera.shake, and we can maybe shake it for a bit longer with maybe a higher values. You try the different values. And as you can see, now we have some explosions when we destroy the asteroids. So just with that, just with a camera that is shaking when you do something, you are making it more interesting. The idea here with Game Juice, the idea is always the same. You want to give player feedback. You want, when something happens in your game, you want the player to understand that something is happening. So you make it visible. Before that, when we were destroying an asteroid, the only thing that was happening is the asteroid was disappearing, which is not super interesting. I think you agree with that. What we want is to show the player that something is happening. We want to show him visually, with also a physical feedback if possible, and I'm going to use some vibration in just a second, and also with sound, of course. Right now we don't have sound, but we can add sound pretty quickly if we want. So another way that we can add some feedback is by doing input dot start joy vibration. I think it's called start joy vibration. So if you have a gamepad, of course, otherwise it's just going to do nothing. So when you destroy, I think we want a pretty strong feedback. So the weak motor is going to use 0.5. The strong motor is between 0 and 1. The strong motor is probably going to use 0.4, and we are going to do that for 0.3 seconds. Okay? We can do the same thing when we shoot. So under the player, when we shoot, we can do the same thing, but we can do that with much smaller values. Otherwise, it's going to feel weird. So I'm going to test that really quickly. So now my controller is vibrating when I'm shooting, and the explosion is making a much stronger vibration. You might think it's nothing. You might think it's something that is not needed, but I can tell you right now that it's actually super useful. It actually feels much nicer now that I can feel the explosion. My controller is vibrating. It's showing me that something is happening. And so it's much more satisfying to explode those little asteroids. So before we finish things with the camera, I want to do something really quickly, because the asteroids at the moment are not super interesting. I think we can do two things to make them more interesting. First of all, we can add a trail, right? Earlier we added a trail. A trail add-on. We can add a trail. So let's do a width curve. Let's do a width curve that would start big and that would become smaller. Let's do a much bigger width of 40. Let's do a much bigger length of 40. And let's change under the fill. Let's do a gradient, okay? So let's start. The first value that I want is the same color as the asteroid. And the last color is the same, but with an alpha value of 0. That's why it's going to fade over time, okay? That's the first thing that I want to do. And the second thing that I want to do is I want to go under animation. I want to create an animation player. Let me think. I can do that by animation, or I can do that by code. What should I do? I think I will do it by code, actually. It's easier. I want to rotate the sprite, just the sprite, okay? We don't rotate anything else, we just rotate the sprite. Because it's round, it doesn't matter. So in here, I'm going to create a variable called var rotation speed. It's a float. Let's say it's in degrees, okay? So 15, I don't know, maybe. And what I'm going to do is under the physics process in here, I'm going to make the sprite rotate. So let's grab the reference to the sprite. And let's do sprite 2D. Actually, I'm going to remove the 2D. It's useless. So sprite, I'm going to do rotation degrees plus equal rotation speed times delta. Okay? And what we can do is at the very beginning, right there, at the very beginning, we can change the rotation speed. That way we don't have the same rotation speed for everyone, for every asteroid. Remember, I told you, one of the way to make your game juicy is to make sure that the things are different. You want to add variety to your game. So you can do rotation speed plus equal renf range, and you can remove, for example, 5 or add 5. Actually, it's going to be in between, of course, but still. Let's look at that right now. So now what do we have? We have something that is rotating. The trail is way too small. We can change that. Okay, so let's change a few things. Let's change the trail. Let's make it much bigger, like 75. Let's change the length to 100. And let's change the rotation speed. It rotates too slowly now, so maybe 25. Now we're talking. Now we're talking. Okay, so we need to scale that difference, right? Otherwise it's going to look weird. We need to change that. So depending on the rend size factor that we have here, the trail is going to look weird depending on the size. So we need to scale that, okay? So by default, this is the size that we have by default. And the rend size factor is going to go that. So what we can do is we can go under the trail. So we can do trail, make 2 trails and fire them depending on when you rotate left and right or forward. You mean for the player? That's something you could do, but with the trail that we're using, it doesn't work. If you offset it, it looks like shit. But you could do that with particles maybe. So trail. Yeah, I know. That's what I tried to do earlier. That's a good idea, but it doesn't work with the trail that we have. It looks like shit because it's not handling the offset correctly. But you can do that with particles if you want. So what I want to do here is I want to change the width and the length here. So I can do length. Do I have access to that? I can do length and I can do multiply equal by rend size factor, and I can do the same thing for the width. And here width. Okay, let's take a look at that. We make sure that depending on the size, we reduce the size. Okay, as you can see, the small asteroids have a smaller trail. Okay, nice. So what we can do maybe, what I want to do is make the length, the base length, I want to make it bigger. Okay. There's one thing that I wanted to change on the particles, on the shards. The shards right now are under the particles material. I want to change the color. So I can do a color ramp really quickly. I want to start at white and I want to go to alpha. I want to make them fade over time. So one cool thing with particles, if you do your ramp only with white, then you can choose whatever color you want by changing the modulate, okay? That's a very handy way of easily changing the color without having to change the gradient that you created here, okay? So I think this is good. Another thing that we could do is add more texture to this. We can do that in just a second. I would like to show you how you can have in one particle multiple textures and you can choose at random between some of those. That would be cool. But before that, I'm going to add 2 functions. Functions zoom out, void pass, and function zoom in. So basically here I'm going to create var tween. I'm going to create a tween. And what we can do is we can say if there's a tween and the tween dot is running, we can kill the tween, okay? To make sure that we are not continuing the tween, we want to start over. And then we can do create tween. I'm going to set the easing to be I'm going to set the easing to be in and out, and I'm going to set the transition to be cubic. if you don't know what transition and thing you should do, you can do Godot, tween, cheat sheet. Okay, so you can do Godot, tween, cheat sheet, and then you can find this little graphic here that is showing you how the tweening is going to look depending on what easing you're using and what transition you're using. So in here we're using the cubic, which is here. Sorry, let me show you better. We are using the cubic and we are using in and out. So this is, we are following this curve right there. You can use bounce, you can use elastic, etc. So cheat, Godot, tweening, cheat sheet, okay? And you will find that. So this is what I want to do, and what I want is I want to tween the property. I want to tween the property of myself. The property is called zoom, and I want to go, when I want to zoom out, I want to go to vector dot 1. Okay, it's going to start from the current zoom that I'm in, and it's going to do that in 0.35, I think should be enough. So this is going to zoom out, and we can do the same thing in zoom in. And I think we put 1.2 in here. We put 1.2 in the zoom. So you can do the same thing, okay? Basically, zoom in and zoom out. So now what you can do, under the asteroid, under the player, sorry, when you are thrusting, you can call globals.camera dot zoom out, and you can do the same thing here with zoom in. And with that, we should have camera zoom in, zoom out. Did I miss something? Zoom in, zoom out. I forgot to create the tween. No, it's here. Set easing, tween in and out. You're tweening the property, zoom. Oh, we want to do that only once. Oh, I'm actually lagging. I hope it's going to come back. I'm sorry guys, I can see that my upload speed is dropping dramatically. It's going to start to drop frames, I'm sorry. I hope it's coming back. I put the music lower. I mean, when I'm speaking, the music should go down, right? Boss music, yes, exactly. So the problem that we have here is because we are currently running. So maybe if we are running a tween, maybe we want to return. Let's try that. So basically we are going to... Oh, but it's never going to come back. So as you can see, I think it looks pretty good, but maybe we can make that smoother by making it a longer duration. So the idea is that when you speed up, the camera zooms out to show you more, and when you stop zooming in, and when you stop thrusting, it's going to come back. I'm sorry I'm dropping a lot of frames. I think it's going to be bad. I don't know what the internet is doing. Sorry about that, guys. I hope it's fine at some point. So we have a bit of time, so let's do something really quickly. Let's go over the shard right there. Let's make that three time bigger. So I'm just using a rectangle to know where my frames are. Basically, I'm going to create a texture with 3 frames. I'm going to show you in just a second. Okay, just like that. Actually, put it in another color, that way I can see. So you can create one shard like that. You can create a second shard like that. You can create a different one, basically. So you make it, you make it maybe like this. I don't know. Oh, I recreated the same shard. Come on. You create another one. It's funny because I'm recreating the same thing. No, okay, it's different. That's good. Then you create a third one. Basically, you create variations, okay? You do it better. I'm doing it very fast, so it's not amazing. But basically, you create variations in your textures, and then you can use those variations inside of your particles. So let me show you that. I hope it's still the same thing with Godot 4. I hope it's still the same thing, and if it's not, we'll see. So I'm going to call that shard sprite sheet. Okay, it's a sprite sheet. So now what we can do is we can go back to the debris particles. Okay, let's go to the debris particles. Temporarily, I'm going to make them not one shot, and I'm going to emit them, that way we can see what I'm doing. Okay, I'm using Affinity Designer. It's basically, it's like Inkscape, but it's paid. It's paid, but it's pretty cheap. You have to pay once. It's a lifetime license. I think it's about 75 euros or something. So it's much cheaper than using Adobe thingy. But if you want something free, you can use Inkscape. It's pretty much the same thing. So now what you can do under texture, okay? Remove that texture, quick load, and we are going to use the shard spreadsheet. So right now, the spreadsheet is looking weird, right? Because all of the textures are shown at the same time. But you can do under material. You go under material. You create new canvas item material. Okay. And in here you tick particle animation. Now you can tell Godot how many frames do you have horizontally. So in my case, I have 3 frames horizontally. So now it's coming back to what we had at the beginning, okay? It's showing me the first frame. But now I can do something pretty cool. I can go back to my particle processing material, and under animation, I can choose what offset I want. So offset minimum, offset max. I can choose between 0 and 1. And maybe it's hard for you to see. But now it's choosing a different... I think it is. It's going very fast, so I can't see offset. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, now it's using a different... one of the different frames, right? The offset is basically telling you where should you be in that sprite sheet. And I'm telling Godot, okay, you can go from 0 to 1, choose whatever you want. You can also animate it if you want, but in this case, it doesn't make a lot of sense. If you want to do animations that would change over time, for example, let's say you created some sort of fire, or a shard that would crumble in smaller pieces, you could do that. But basically, it's one way, actually, it's the way to create particles with different pieces. So let's go back to one shot. Now that we have that, one thing that we can do is move the camera depending on where the player is. So let's do that really quickly. I'm going to show you how we can do that and how it can be interesting. So let's create a variable just between the bottom of the tween. Let's call it target. By default, it's going to be null. Okay. So if we don't have any target, or let's say if we have a target, we are going to do something. And what we are going to do is we are going to offset the camera slightly to face the player. We're not going to follow the player, we're just going to slightly offset the camera, okay? In this case, we are going to use the property on the camera that is called horizontal and vertical offset. So we need to enable those things. And if you go here, you can see that you can offset the camera left and right. Okay, -1 and 1. It's going to be -1 or 1. And you can do the same thing vertically. So we can do that. Let's go here and let's do this. So first of all, we want to know how far the player is compared to the center of the screen. So I already have here. I don't actually. But we can, using getViewport.size, we can do that. So first of all, we want to compute where is the center of the screen. So var center, it's a vector2. It's going to be getViewportRect.size. So it's the size of the viewport, and we are going to divide it by 2. Not that. Divided by 2. Okay, this is going to be our center. And now what we can do is we can check. Let's create a new variable called target offset. It's going to be a vector2 again, and we can compute the difference between the target global position and the center. I'm not exactly sure. Let me see. Target offset, so we can print that. Are you doing it? No, you're not doing it because you don't have camera to the target. No, target is equal to player. You pass the reference to the camera. That way you have a target. So as you can see from what I'm computing, we basically can know how far we are from the center of the camera. So now what we can do, this target offset, we can divide it by the center, and it's going to print us something that should be between 0 and 1. Fuck, I'm lagging again. So as you can see, when I'm close to the end here, I'm at 1. I'm close to the left here, I'm at -1. When I'm close to the top, I'm at -1, and I'm close to the bottom, I'm at 0. -1 or 1. See what I mean? So now what we can do is we can do offset horizontal. I don't know how it's named in Godot 4. It's named drag horizontal offset. I think it's this one, right? Yes. Drag horizontal offset. And we can pass basically target offset.h. And we can do the same thing with a .x, sorry. And we can do, come on, we can do the same thing here with y for the vertical offset. Vertical offset. Fuck, I'm dropping frames again. So I'm just gonna remove the position smoothing for a second to show you something. So the problem with this is that it's hard to see because the background is unified. So maybe I could use some noise to make it. But can you see that the camera is following, in a way, the player? You can see that the camera is moving to follow the player. It's a bit hard to see because the background is very unique. It's very the same color. So to do that, to change that, so this is working fine, but what we can do is we can enable the smoothing, and that way it's going to smooth us, it's going to smooth the position for us even better. We don't have to lerp the values, basically it's doing it for us. I feel like my my muzzle flash is not amazing. Maybe we can change that really quickly. Already it's pretty cool. So one thing that we can do really quickly maybe is add a texture rect. I'm thinking maybe we can add a texture rect. I'm gonna make the texture rect. I'm gonna use noise texture 1920 by 1080. Inside here, I'm going to use some noise. Okay. With some frequency like that. Perfect. Actually, I'll make that bigger. I'll make that bigger. We'll make the texture 4K. And basically what I can do is change the visibility to blend that with the background a bit. So the blending is not going to be perfect, and you could animate that if you want, but just to show you. That way we can see that we are moving against the background. We can see a bit more easily that we are moving against the background. Okay. And as you can see right now, I think the game already looks much better than it was at the end. There's movement on the camera, there's camera shake when we destroy things and when we shoot. We have some particle effects. We have some joypad vibration. We don't have sounds, and I think sound would add a lot. But you can easily make some sound using the Godot SFXR plugin. I don't think it's available for Godot 4 though. But you could make it using Godot 3 and use the resource with Godot 4 then. Okay, so let's quickly change the muzzle flash because it doesn't look that good. So first thing, I think I'm going to change the values here. I'm going to make that much bigger. Maybe much bigger than that, actually. 0.26. 26.5. In here, those things should be ease in and out too. And I think I will remove the red. Honestly, I will remove the red, or I will add more white. Let's see. Because the red doesn't look that good with what we have right now. Okay, let's see if it looks better or not. Yeah, it looks a bit better, I think. Of course, you can add even more particles for that. I love the explosion effect. And honestly, I think that's it. At least that's it for today. I think we have seen pretty much everything. I've used the animation player. I've used the particles. I've used the twinning system. I show you how to make a camera slightly more interesting with camera shake and camera movement. So yeah, it's a good base, I think. And of course, you can start from here and add more things to make it even more interesting. I think, for example, having a counter with how many points you have and stuff like that would make it even more interesting. Well, Pascal, I'm glad you liked it. It's only the beginning. You can go much further with a game like that. It's a simple game, but you can go much, much further. But really, one thing to remember, I think I can give you a few ideas just to finish. So one thing to remember is animate everything. If you have something, it shouldn't be static. So it should have a bit of movement. It should have some particles. It should have something to animate it. When you do something, create feedback. If the player is shooting, the player should know he's shooting by having some screen shake, having some particle effects, having some noise, whatever. But you should make it obvious that something is happening, right? Also, another important thing with Juice is to layer the effects. So if something is exploding, don't just put one particle, put multiple particles doing different things. Maybe add some sound, make the screen shake a bit. You want to use different effects for the same event to make it more interesting. And that way people will not see only the effect, they will see the whole thing, right? If you only have one particle when your asteroid is exploding, people are going to notice that the particles are here. They're going to say, oh, this is a particle system, I can see it. But now if you have screen shake, if you have explosions, if you have multiple things happening on the screen, people will say, oh, okay, that's a destruction, that's an explosion, and they will not think about the individual things. Another important thing is to have randomness in your effects. So different lifetime, different scaling, different color, different durations. Use some randomness to make things more interesting again. If you see the same animation over and over again with the same parameters, it's going to look weird and it's not going to be good. What else can I say? Use twins, especially the twins in God of War. They are amazing to do complex stuff. We didn't go very far with the twinning. I just did the twin on the camera that is coming out and in. But in my Godot course on Juice, I'm using twins a lot, and it's honestly super, super effective. So if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to follow me somewhere. I will be talking about that more in the future. The course is going to come out in the next weeks, I'm gonna say. And yeah, you will be able to find that on GitHub, okay? I will update the code and you will have the code up to date with what we did today. And yeah. The noise in the background looks a bit weird. Yeah, the noise. So I added noise really quickly just for you to see that we are moving the camera you can see the camera is moving slightly to follow the player, right? That's just what I wanted to show you. And without the noise, it was a bit hard to see. So that's why I added the noise. But of course, if you find the noise weird, just put something else. Or tweak the noise. You can animate the noise, for example, to make it a bit more interesting. I'm sure you can find something. Thanks, Pascal. I'm glad that you enjoyed the videos. And also, if you're not following me on my main YouTube channel, you can follow me there, Mr. Elliptic. I have a YouTube video coming pretty soon, showing you the difference between a 10-minute game and a 10 hours game. Basically, I'm doing the same game in 10 minutes and in 10 hours, and I'm showing you the difference. It's also going to talk about juice, so I think you can enjoy that. Well, guys, thank you for joining me tonight. Again, you will have the full replay on YouTube, and you will have the sources on GitHub. So don't hesitate to check out those. Looks good. Gonna watch the archive. Good. Don't forget to comment if you like it. If you have any question, whatever, comment, drop a like, drop a subscribe, whatever. And I will see you later. Bye, guys. Thanks for watching.